Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my 2021 Summer Quarterly Writerly Wrap-Up video. I make one of these videos every 3 months in order to track my writing habits and goals, and here we are at the segue of another season. I think this is going to be one of my shortest videos on this topic, but overall it's been a really good writing month for me. I'm very happy with it. So without further ado, you'll see headings come down because I divide these videos into 4 parts, and I will get started. So here are my 2 big achievements of the quarter, starting with an accolade for a short story. I submitted my short story Cliffs and Vistas to a writing competition put out by the Conium Review, a literary journal, and they have an annual innovative fiction writing contest. Their fiction leans more toward the weird side. And anyway, they have an annual judge every year from the writing community to pick out the winner and the runners-up and all of that. Elle Nash was that for this year. And a couple of months after I submitted my piece, I got an email saying that I'd made it into the semifinals list. And that was very exciting for me. I had no idea to even expect something like that, anything beyond winner or runners-up. And it also meant that my story was in the top 10% of all of the submitted stories to the contest. So a bit of an ego boost, really. Very exciting. And I just wrote a blog post about it, in fact, which I'll link down below. But I think my bigger accomplishment, really, this quarter, even though it's not technically, you know, an accolade, is that I joined the DC Writers Salon, which was actually in part one of my goals for the quarter, and I achieved it, definitely. And I've been an active member for the past 3 months, and it's been really amazing. It feels like less and more than 3 months at once. It's become a big staple of my writing life and my social life. There's been great people involved that I've met people through this, of course, regulars who are there at the same time that I am. I'll leave a link to the Writers Salon down below, but basically this is a grassroots organization started by one individual, the founder, who's this really amazing woman, and she decided she wanted to start a writing accountability group that first met out of her house, but then grew so big that she leased some property in DuPont Circle, and we all pay dues to be a part of it, but she keeps it really nice and homey with lots of chairs and tables to sit and write, and snacks and drinks and books, the works. And there are several scheduled writing sessions per week, in fact, and a book club, and people can have some time to come in on their own if they'd like. So it's a really nice little thriving grassroots community, and it's helped me a lot with my writing goals, which I will get into later, but basically it's a huge win for me. I'm really glad to be active like this again. This is the part of the video where I take a little bit of a segue away from the fiction writing that dominates the rest of this video. But anyway, a bulk of the writing I do really is blogging, where I maintain 3 blogs and contribute to them at least once monthly. So I figured I would like to highlight my favorite blog posts of the quarter. So I pick 1 per each blog. So I'll start with my reading and writing blog, since I was already talking about the DC Writers Salon. And I'm picking my favorite blog post is where I talked about a feedback session from that salon. Because the specific group I joined within the Writers Salon is called the Finishers Group, and it's a more dedicated group. You're supposed to go in with a plan of action for the quarter about what you want to finish, so it's a lot like these videos, really. And so as part of that, midway through the quarter and then at the end, there's a feedback session where participants are encouraged to submit up to 2,500 words, and then other members give their feedback on it. So I went ahead and wrote about that experience because it had been my first time doing any sort of critiquing in over a year, not nearly as in-depth or involved as my former writers group, but certainly something, and it encouraged me to revive that part of my blog again where I talk about, you know, feedback and critique sessions. So I gave my thoughts about returning to it and what it was like to do for my fantasy project, because I submitted a random chapter for my fantasy novel, and what it was like to critique other people's stuff in a very short format of just having 15 minutes for everybody to give feedback on a specific piece. But anyway, I'm hoping it'll be part of a long tradition for me, something like that, and in fact could encourage me to continue writing short literary stories, which I think are a better fit for that sort of feedback session anyway, and then keep me in the game of writing short stories to be rejected by literary magazines. Every writer's dream. My other two blog posts have to do with the Jewish high holidays, which happened a couple of weeks ago. I started at the beginning of the high holidays with my Hava's Footsteps blog, which is a blog I write about Jewish and pop culture and things that pop into my head. And so before the high holidays begin, I have a habit of writing probably my most personal post on Hava's Footsteps, where I talk about where I am at the beginning of the year and what I want to bring into the new year. And since I am a federal contractor, September tends to be a time of renewal too in my working world, as contracts end and start anew. And so I talked a little bit about my working life, and I talked a little bit about my goals for myself within the Jewish community, which might involve joining yet another book club, which I'm kind of excited and kind of nervous about because I have so many reading goals as it is, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it was a nice way to sort of take stock of myself, assess where I am and where I wanted to be for the new year. And then I ended the high holidays with my Jewish DC post. My Jewish DC blog is where I specifically highlight Jewish events happening around the DC area. And so for this one I talked about my experience with my synagogue, basically, because I spent the high holidays celebrating with my synagogue, and it's a very robust time of year because the high holidays are very important in the Jewish calendar. So I just picked out favorite events that happened on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I was able to attend in person, which was exciting for everyone, I think, because of due to COVID, of course, last year no one could attend in person, and this year we were allowed to attend in person with, of course, some caveats for safety. Including a huge-ass tent that we had several of the services in outside in the parking lot, you know, with the outside fresh air and all that. I feel like the entire event was much more active, like the rabbis were trying to get us to stomp around and sing loudly and feel more present and alive, so that was a interesting new visceral feel for the holidays, and there's other stuff that I highlighted on my blog as well. All in all, it was a very happy holiday season for me, although, alas, the Flash Choir wasn't able to convene to rehearse and do our usual number for Rosh Hashanah because of the health restrictions, but we did the best we could, I guess, singing along from our seats. So that's something. Okay, on to the meat and potatoes of this video, where I recap my summer goals and see if I achieved them or not, because if I didn't, a certain SEPTA will have to visit me. So goal number one, again returning to the DC Writers Salon, was that I wanted to join the DC Writers Salon Finishers Group. And I think I've already confirmed over and over that that indeed did happen. And I'm really glad it did. It was absolutely the highlight of this quarter, and I really hope it will continue to be in quarters to come. Attached to that is my goal number 2, which was to rewrite my fantasy chapters and tackle the dreaded Act 2A, which I have been toiling over for quarter upon quarter on end, barely making any progress with Act 2A of my fantasy project. But as I hoped, joining the Writers Salon, and particularly this finishers group, was the fire under my ass. And indeed, I rewrote chapters and rewrote parts of my outline and did so much work on Act 2A. I have not completed it yet, but I am so much further along than I have been in months. I have a lot of imposter syndrome going on in my head about the quality of the writing and even, second-guessing story elements, but at the same time, the ideas are still percolating and really more than ever being as more robust than ever because I'm not only jotting them down, but writing them out in actual scenes of characters and motivations and plot coming together like a story. So yes, I will say that I definitely completed this goal. And finally, goal number 3 was to draft a flash fiction project, which yes, I did this as well. I talked in my last quarterly wrap-up video about a very specific idea and a specific call for submissions from a specific literary journal that had come up. And I did indeed write the story, and I submitted it to the literary magazine, and I got rejected. So huzzah! Whole process completed. That being said, I do think I'm going to abandon this particular project. That's not something I usually do, one rejection compelling me to walk away from the story entirely. But in this particular case, I feel like the story was a little too fan-fiction-y, maybe even a little too plagiarisy, so I feel like I'm okay letting this one go and moving on to the next thing in future quarters. But before I go on to my next header here, I guess I have to ask, should Septuagint visit me? I did, in fact, achieve all of my goals. I've done better on this segment than I have in any of these quarterly wrap-up videos I've done before. And yet, there is something I mentioned in my spring wrap-up video that I didn't do. It wasn't an official goal, but I did mention that I was hoping that my former writing group, the more in-depth critique group that I had been involved with for a couple years before COVID, would meet up again. Several of us did in fact meet up in June for Lacey's book launch party, Lacey being one of the members of our group who published in the summer her rom-com novel, The Layover. And Lacey and I got to talking at her book launch to say that we were hoping that the group would convene again, and Lacey said, well, I'll send out an email in August, and I thought, if she doesn't, I will. And she didn't, and I didn't. So...
Shame. Shame. Shame.
What can I say? I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm too used to Septa Inella now. I can't let her go. Maybe I should make that a goal for my next writing quarter. But actually, I think I have some good ones in mind. Well, here we are, moving on into the final quarter of 2021, if you can believe it. And like all quarters, this is a very special quarter in the writing community because it is the NaNoWriMo quarter. That's right. In November, a group of stalwart crazy writers will be convening online and maybe in person to write 50,000 words of a project in 30 days. We'll see how we do. So of course I have some writing goals relating to that and to other things. So here we go. Here they are, my autumn 2021 goals. Goal number 1 is to draft a new short story project. And this harkens back to what I was talking about with the Finishers Group feedback sessions and how I wanted to be able to share something with them in upcoming quarters and how I wanted to continue to write literary short stories to, submit to journals. So there we go. I have an idea in mind and I'm thinking in October I should try to hash it out during the salon. Goal number 2 is NaNoPrepMo, outline Act 2B, plus a new character sheet. I just can't believe I can sit here and think I'm close enough to Act 2B to be able to outline it after way too many quarters of only talking about sludging through Act 2A. But now I'm almost completed with that act, so I better figure out what the hell I want to write for Act 2B of my fantasy project. So I figure that's a good one to do for NaNoPrepMo, which is also our word for October. And a new character sheet harkens to the fact that I have a new significant character who will be entering the story around the midway point, but I only really understand him in broad plot strokes, and I should really understand him a lot more as a character, so I'll have to figure out a way to get to know him a bit, find a good character sheet for him. And finally, my goal number 3 is for NaNoWriMo itself, and it is to continue work on my fantasy project. I don't think I'll have any trouble with this one. I really hope it will flow a lot easier this year than last year, considering that I've been doing so much work on it, my fantasy project this quarter. So I guess this is my official way of saying that I am a Nano Rebel, in fact, because I am continuing to work on an old project rather than start a new one. And in fact, more than that, I will be working on multiple projects rather than one 50,000 word project. Because I've decided that I'd rather be productive on several projects than dry myself out and write something strained and bad for one of them and completely ignore the rest. Trying to do what's good for me here and for my writing goals, of course. That's the whole point of these videos. And I think of Nano, really, in a broader sense. So yeah, there we go. And of course you will be hearing from me much sooner than my next quarterly wrap-up video when it comes to NaNoWriMo, because in November I make weekly NaNoWriMo vlogs, and I'm very much looking forward to that next month. So stay tuned. So that about covers it for me now. Speaking of staying tuned to this channel, I got videos coming out far sooner than November, starting with an imminent one about the BookTube prize, because Robert will be announcing the official winners of the 2021 BookTube prize on October 2nd in the afternoon, well, for Eastern Standard Time anyway. And hopefully very soon after that, I will give my own thoughts on the fiction ballot that I indeed finally finished and submitted. Hopefully not too close to the deadline for him, but it's all done now. So I'm so excited to give my thoughts, and even more excited to hear who wins and to hear from my fellow judges about what they thought about all of this. So yeah, it's a fun weekend ahead for me, a fun start to October, huzzah! Hope that you're also all having great times as we enter into a new month as well. So thanks so much for watching, everyone. Keep writing, and I'll see you next time.